When we think about cities, we think about London, Paris, Dubai, Lisbon, Mexico City, all the fun places, right? But what about the places that are actually lived in on a regular basis that we aren't using just for entertainment? About the places where individuals live that don't have money to go anywhere else, but quality of life is impacted by poor air ventilation, which increases pollution, poor access to health needs like access to proper doctors, access to proper medication, access to the food that people need. We don't think about those things. So today, that's what we're going to be focusing on. Yes, I'm originally from New York, and we think of Broadway and Central Park, and then I lived in United Kingdom for a while, so you think of London and all the London Eye and all the amazing things. And I've been to Dubai. I was deployed there twice, and so you think of the marble everywhere, the high cost of quality of living, the great experiences, the sand dune riding, the great vacations. But there's another side, the side of the people who actually live there every day and have to navigate life. Studies have shown that premature labor in the summer is increased by individuals who live in the cities. By living in cities, you tend to have higher buildings, which decreases the airflow, lack of greenery, unless you're able to live in places close to the parks, which tend to be reserved for people of a certain economic status, or you deal with higher temperatures because there's no greenery. So now between the pavement and the lack of greenery, there's no there's no trees to filter the air to provide shade to increase decrease the temperature. You have more cars, more hustle and bustle. You have higher, which causes higher pollution, higher cortisol levels. You have people who tend to be shorter and not look out for each other. You have a little more on guard going on because it's a lot of people. And in those things, you see individuals live and you see them thrive, but what you don't see are the long-term effects that affect them throughout the lifespan. And so when you think of cities, we need to think of access to resources, adequate resources, even phenomenal resources. You have to think about the ability to get to supermarkets. When I grew up in New York, my parents are from Brooklyn. They lived in the projects. As they all grew up, my parents moved to the suburbs, all their siblings except for two on both sides. So there was 4 individuals who moved out of 10. I had an aunt who had a brownstone. They bought it when I was probably about 2 years old. And it was nice, but when you go outside, you would go out and you see everybody in the neighborhood. There was rarely any police. They didn't really clean up. There's trash in a lot of places. The buildings were not dilapidated, but they weren't amazing. And fast forward to, you either had a grocery store, a bodega, or a Chinese food store. Not a grocery store, I meant a bodega or a liquor store or a Chinese food store. And so if you had to go out and get food shopping, you had to get on a train, you had to bring a car, you had to drag everything across town, or you had to get a cab. But if your budget could barely afford food, how can you afford the transportation to get to the appropriate food? So you end up eating the fried fish sandwiches or the fried egg sandwiches from the bodega with the processed sandwich meats. You wind up going to the Chinese food store where you have a lot of MSG and fried foods and gravies and sodium. And those who had poor experiences and are trying to silence the noise tend to go to alcohol and drugs. Like, you have better access to alcohol and drugs than you do to pharmaceuticals, doctors, and apples. And so that played a big part. And you could say, well, that's not everywhere. Yeah, but when you look at the cost of living for the places where it wasn't so, it wasn't for everybody. And it wasn't welcome to everybody. Whereas where I grew up, you can walk out my door, turn left, and there's a park. there's a grocery store, there's an elementary school, we had an acre of land, we played outside every day, all day, we had a pool, so there was walkability, there was access to resources, there was the access to proper doctors, and all these things play a major part in the course of our lives. And that is because when you look at the course of someone's life, individuals who tend to live in these cities are going to have respiratory issues because of poor ventilation, high pollution, high stress, all these things that make the body work. And you're going to see chronic illnesses more prevalent in those areas than you do in other areas. And so if you continue to scroll through this, you'll find several videos and a couple articles to support everything I'm saying.